Swivl Sessions, interviews with field service entrepreneurs. Get insights and strategies from those who took the leap and risked it all to start their own home service companies. Awesome talk today with Kelton French from French Fix. Jeremy, what do you got?
Kelton has a great attitude and a solid customer-focused approach to running French Fix, his handyman business. And I think that combined with a determination to find a solution to any home repair issue was kind of cool to see.
His entrepreneurial ethos of don't stop, continue will definitely resonate with people that are wanting to start their own companies. It's not going to be crazy busy all the time, just sticking with it. And communication is key, and he definitely he has it. So Kelton French with French Fix, and enjoy the show.
Welcome to Swivl Sessions, where we dive into the world of field service entrepreneurship. Now, before we get into today's interview, let's introduce the host you'll be hearing from. First off, let's meet Edgar, our resident sales maestro, who brings an invaluable history of selling various field service projects. Now, normally after an introduction like this, Edgar would graciously say, "Thank you for those kind words." Honestly, it's a bit repetitive, so today we've decided to spotlight his habit and watch him twitch like a deer in the headlights for what to say next. Edgar?
Hi, Kelton. Thanks for being here. I'd like to introduce you to Tyson. He's our expert. Great. Awesome. Tyson's our expert at tackling customer challenges and keeping things on track. Fair warning, though, he's also a big golfer, but his swing is more of a hazard than a skill. Rumor has it, the local course even started calling him Lawnmower Tyson because of all the divots he leaves behind on the course. That's John Tyson.
True story. All right, last but not least, there's Rob, the mastermind behind Swivl, who swears by juicing and camping, but he still can't seem to drop a pound. He's ready to drive off in his Rivian with his Yakima 10 attached at the first sign of work. Blender in hand, toolbox left behind. Give it up for the guy who loves juice cleanses but avoids fixes anything, Rob.
And there's a big difference between juicing and blending, just saying. Like, it's all about fiber, Tyson.
It's in the syntax.
Today, we are thrilled to welcome Kelton French, enterprising founder of French Fix, a home repair company based in Daphne, Alabama. And Kelton stepped into the world of entrepreneurship by starting his own home repair business right there in Daphne. The service area covers the greater Mobile Bay area, and we're excited to hear about what inspired him to launch this venture and the challenges he's navigated and the insights he's gained throughout his journey. So, Kelton, welcome to Swivl Sessions. How are things in your world?
Doing good, man. Things have been definitely busy around here. We live in a very high output area. Everybody's always needing something, and it's never ending, never stops.
Kelton, tell us about your background. We'd like to hear about, what guys were doing before they got into their entrepreneurship, and we'd love to hear about your story.
So I have been in the kind of the home world for quite some time now. I started off whenever we moved here to this area. I started off as a assistant marketing director for a major real estate company in the area and moved up to IT director for the company for quite some time.
Okay.
Kind of just, was around the real estate world, a lot of realtors. I was with them personally every single day, hours on end, and got to see what they dealt with from a construction standpoint of getting homes ready and all those different things. And then I met somebody that was a friend of mine in the roofing business, and he wanted me to, sell roofs for him. And I was like, all right, that's cool. We can do that. And I kind of dabbled with it. And then Hurricane Sally hit. Well, then it was just like, getting a milk jug and just pouring it out, just never stopped pouring. It came to us. And so I got a little carried away thinking that, hey, this is like this every single day. Wow, this is crazy. We can make this kind of money doing roofing. It just, it seemed a lot simpler than it was, but it ended up being a little bit harder. And then I ended up kind of learning my own niche and what it was, and ended up, stopping the whole real estate company job and went full-time roofing. So I went full-time roofing for about 3 or 4 years and didn't stop. We were absolutely grinding. We got really blessed to not have to knock a lot of doors. I had a lot of realtors that trusted in me and would call me, then their friends would call me. I was a very rare word of mouth kind of guy. And that really works great in this area when it comes to word of mouth. Word of mouth is huge around here. During that time, everything was great. Roofing was great. I got a phone call from somebody wanting me to venture out and chase storms and chase insurance companies and help sue insurance companies whenever they didn't, do the policy right. I fell for that mess and chased it and came home. When it didn't work out, cold turkey, had to start roofing again, had nothing, didn't know what we were going to do to put the next meal on the table. And roofing kind of took off again a little bit. And then the roofing company I was with decided to merge with another company. I wasn't really interested. Still a great company, great friends, still work with them a lot, but wasn't interested in the merger. So I looked at my wife. I said, hey, why don't I go ahead and start doing little handyman stuff while we figure out what we're going to do? And I kind of went into that with her. And I said, we'll figure out what we're going to do a little side job and kind of get it flowing. And sure enough, I'm kind of an all-out kind of guy. Next thing you know, I'm up all night. I have an LLC formed. I have, working on getting bank accounts set up for business, working on a website, all this stuff. She's like, why in the world did you just put so much work into this for a side job? I said, well, I want it to be a successful side job. So kept flowing with it, kept going with it. Our first month, we were absolutely blown away. We did $26,000 in revenue, and we just didn't know what to do next. We were just mind boggled that it worked. I didn't spend a dime on marketing, didn't spend any money on marketing, and then bam, here we are today.
Kelton, was that kind of the moment where you were standing on the ledge and you decided, okay, we're just going to jump off and we're going to start the company?
Jump straight off. Absolutely. And ever so often I hit the ground and I jump again.
So do you consider it now a successful side job then? A successful side job that takes all your time?
I would say 325,000 in revenue for my first year as a handyman business isn't too bad.
That's
good
fantastic.
for you.
That's pretty awesome.
That's awesome.
How long you been in business for then?
A year and 6 months.
All right. Are you seeing a good growth rate? What's your expected
just like
this year?
This year?
Yeah.
Lord. Probably the same. Probably very equal.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say that we were kind of worried because, last year, November, the whole November, December thing was just straight dry. And so that was new to us. We learned the hard way that, hey, this is a slow time of year. And so we took a different initiative to those things, and we're still successful during those times. Was it the peak of every other month? Absolutely not. But we learned to find niches that people need for those times. And it's not about, going out and getting the same type of jobs. It's how you word going out to get those kind of jobs to be able to achieve getting those jobs during those holiday seasons that we learned that was very successful for us. And this month, we're having one of our greatest months out of the whole entire year, and it's November.
Right.
Awesome.
So typically, we would want to really grill you about kind of that time frame right after you launched. And I think that time frame is like a year and a half. So you think you're right still in there maybe. So
we're still new.
It's always super interesting to us that, that I always want to ask guys, entrepreneurs like yourself about your expectations. So, it sounds like, and oftentimes like when you kind of crawl into the new business venture, your expectations are kind of there, and then they kind of come into fruition instead of hitting you in the face as a brand new expectation that you didn't foresee. But what were your expectations and how were they met or not met? Like a lot of guys, for example, might think that they're going to go into business themselves and not work as much. I know that's never the case.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm going to hit on that. So the going into this business, absolutely went into this business with the goal of, first of all, financial freedom, right? Financial freedom and freedom to make my own schedule, to be able to spend more time with my family. Is that always the case? Absolutely not. There's many times that my wife said, I would almost rather you go get a job at Walgreens as much as you've been gone lately. I'm like, yeah, but you're not going to like that paycheck. But, we've had those kind of conversations that, we did this to be able to have more family time and all that. And do we get that? We absolutely do. Is it every time that does it match the moments that we want it to happen, all the time? No, it doesn't. But the going into this thinking that we wasn't going to work hard, I'm working harder than I think I ever have. But the reward is different. The reward is definitely different because, we did this to be able to help people and to be able to be a service to people. And I love people. I just love dealing with people. And so, yeah, I definitely would say that working hard is the only way to be successful. If you're not going to work hard and you plan on starting your own business, save your time a lot of trouble and just go work for the man.
Totally agree.
Yeah,
I think the
that's
people that go into business for themselves thinking that they're going to be, putting their feet up and fishing more are the ones that fail fast.
Yes.
Let me ask you about tying the thread from before you started to now. I think I know the answer to it, but what of your skills did you carry forward from the jobs that you had previously into this? What was your number one skill?
My number one skill. This is going to blow your mind.
Maybe I don't know it.
Communication.
It's good.
If you don't communicate, you won't be successful. You can do the worst job ever. You can have the worst construction job ever. You can tank worse than anybody, but have absolute incredible communication, and they will call you back. We paint really good, by the way.
That helps.
Yeah.
I could not agree more with you. I can tell you from my experiences, every time that we've had problems, no matter what the problem was, whether it's with employees or with customers, always from a breakdown in communications. So that's pretty cool that you recognize that. And I think that will serve you well if you know that you can rely on that.
Yeah, because see, when we started backtracking to when we started this company, one of the things that I analyzed and I kind of watched and observed was every time I was helping a real estate agent with their email was messed up or their computer was messed up, I would overhear phone conversations be like, well, we're supposed to have this person come out to give us a quote on painting, but they never showed up. Oh, well, they gave us the quote, but they never came to do the work. So we're still looking for somebody. And I'm sitting there going, I wish I made the money that those guys were making.
Yeah.
And that's why I got into this business. So I could figure out what they were doing. And,
I think you were spot on about communication as being the number one thing. And it's a great thread from your previous jobs to what you're doing now.
And we hear about that a lot. Customer communication is key to success.
Absolutely.
Without question.
I would say what I noticed from listening to you talk about your previous jobs, that sales is what I thought you were going to say. But what is sales if not just robust communications, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Sales is a big deal. I grew up in sales my whole entire life. Now our family is very high up. My wife's parents and my parents are very high up in the network marketing world. Been in magazines, interviews, all those different things. They're very established in those markets, and that's I give a lot of credit to those type of people of how to handle people.
For sure.
If you're not scared to knock a door, you'll never go hungry.
Kelton, you had mentioned that you guys do a great job painting, and I want to know, let's learn more about the business. What do you guys do? Tell us about your services and where you shine and all that.
Yeah, so that kind of goes back to me listening and kind of hearing what people's needs were, right? So I consider myself a one-stop shop, right? So if someone says, hey, can you do it? Absolutely. It may not be me, but I can do it. And so, I don't turn down money, right? If someone's got something and it's a need, I want them to know that I'm the one that helps supply that need, right? So, uh, people love reassurance, and they love to know that, shoot, I finally found you, but you're not the guy. Now I got to go find somebody else. Don't worry about it. I'll find them. I got you. Let's see what your need is. Let's get it scheduled. Let's get it done. And then I become that person that finds the person, right? And so I started off doing that because I did not want to ever have to disappoint someone and turn them down, because I knew that they were wanting to get a job done, and I knew how to find someone to do it. Whether I couldn't do it or if someone else could do it, I could get it done. And so that's kind of how we do things. I'm very big on going out, meeting contractors, meeting people who do things, meeting people who have a niche at things. And I'll find somebody who's like, "Oh, you're a painter? Let me see some of your work." I never miss an opportunity when I find out somebody does some type of trade. I mingle with that person, get to know them, take their business card. Hey, if I need you, I'll call you, because I may need them. And
Yep.
so I've been blessed
Build that network.
I've been very blessed to help a lot of other people who don't necessarily have the ability that I have, that I get very, very strongly from my mother. I could talk to a brick wall behind me and we will have a great conversation. And it doesn't bother me. And so a lot of people that I know that are in these trade works, they don't have that capability. A lot of them are introverted, but very good at a trade, very good at a position. And I'm able to enable that person to be successful by finding them work and getting them work outside of what they're already getting. And that, to me, is an absolute, just a huge reward for me to help other people be successful using their abilities while I'm using mine.
And make money off of it.
Absolutely.
Kelton, I heard earlier you mentioned you had a tech background. I was curious how technology has helped French Fix and what you use. A background. I remember you said that you were in IT at some point, and I was just curious
IT.
with
Yeah.
technology, how technology has helped French Fix grow, and if you use any types of platforms.
I do. So I am very big on technology. I actually say that a lot of my success is definitely dedicated to technology, and definitely using the right type of technology. I use software to be able to send all my quotes, all those type of things. I try to make that very professional. Everybody gets a quote from me. They can go in, they can accept it, they can deny it, they can, ask questions and we can talk about it. I have yet, and this is probably a area where I probably fail at. My wife gets onto me all the time, but I have yet to put any money into marketing for our company other than a website. I have not done anything. I have strictly been word of mouth. One of the things that I do that I am very hard-nosed about, I don't never miss a beat, is Facebook. Every one of our areas, I'm not sure about where you guys are, but we have areas called like what's happening in blah, blah, blah. What's happening in this neighborhood or this section here. I am very active in those groups. Now, we're only allowed to post on Mondays. So every Monday there's something new that we post in those groups that drags everybody's attention. I'm very big on videos. I'm very big on really nice marketing pieces. And I will say that when it comes to the marketing pieces, I always make sure that there's a family photo in anything that I do, because
We saw that.
people,
Yeah, that looks good.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I always make sure that there's always a family photo as much as possible in everything that I post, because for one, people today want to know who's coming to their door. They want to know who they're supporting, who they're dealing with. And so I try to get ahead of the game by letting them see my family, letting them see that, we're just like you out here helping people, making money and supporting our family. And that's really, when it comes to technology, that's kind of my focus. We're definitely going to get into more marketing stuff here at the beginning of the year, but at the same time, we've been blessed to have word of mouth and it's really just absolutely just shot us right out of the cannon, and it's been great.
Kelton, what about so as you expand, do you have employees yet?
So as of right now, I have a dad and I have my brother, and they do a lot of stuff for me. They help me. So as of right now, we're very family driven when it comes to having to hire people, right? They just kind of work for me to help me complete jobs and do jobs where I need more people. But when it comes to employees, I don't have like dead set like employees. I have people that work under my umbrella that work for me to be able to do jobs, and for me to be able to be bigger than I truly am, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So those are the subcontractors you were talking about when you were saying you don't turn away work.
Absolutely. Like this morning, I went and done some drywall repairs myself and some painting, just because it was one of those things where, hey, I can pay somebody and make $50 on the job, or I can do it myself and make 800. So
Right. Yeah.
I decided to make 800.
So let me ask you though, when you're farming out jobs to subcontractors, and this is kind of like that growth problem of keeping your reputation as high as you do with your heightened communication skills and quality, how do you QA subcontractors to the point where you can keep it at that standard to protect your reputation?
Yes, that is very important. So that is why I have not grown past where I'm at, is because if there's anything that terrifies me, it's that.
Yep.
So right now we are 5 stars strong. And I always make the joke with clients whenever they ask me about my reviews and all that. Hey, look, we're 5 stars strong. And we're gonna use that as long as we can. We know it's not guaranteed forever, but there will be times where someone will give me a 4-star, and that's okay. I want everybody to be honest, but right now we're 5 stars. And so me keeping that 5 stars is keeping everybody close. But I have started to venture out a little bit. And I've got a guy that I've met that started to work for me that I did not know, but turned out to be that he made some remarks that sounded very similar to my views, and it made sense. And so I tried him out on a job, and it's worked out great. So filling people out, I don't really have a Q&A as much as people kind of give it away when they talk to you about their clients and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And I watch very closely on how other contractors refer to their clients. And that tells me a lot about how they think about their work and about what they do. And so, and how much they care about what they do. Because I've had some terrible clients. I had one client that just, to this day, when there's a job that we don't want to do and everybody wants to know why, we name that person and say it's that job. And so then we walk away. So but we don't never hardly ever walk away. There's people that we understand. There's things that they need and they're frustrated. We don't allow that frustration to come out in the way we handle the job and the way we handle them. Everybody's different. There's been people that I've had that are absolutely just, I had a lady that called me the other day that just, man, I wanted to just hit that end call button so bad, but I just listened to her, and guess what? It went from I'm not going to be doing the work for her because she doesn't want me to do the work because I don't have enough people, and I was a little more expensive than the other guy that can't get there till 2027. So she decided to go with me at the very end of my phone call because I decided to just continue to treat her with kindness and continue to listen to her need. And then, bam, I landed a job.
That's good long-term strategy, and that's how you build a good business. And I think you are
absolutely
doing just that.
Kelton, tell us about your goals. Maybe short-term, long-term. I know we've talked about a lot. Are there some give your eye on the prize for some certain things for the company and for yourself?
Absolutely. First of all, play golf more.
There we go.
There you go. An honest answer. I like it.
Nice.
Keep it in the short grass.
play golf more. And then me and my wife were talking, and one of the goals that I would love to do is to slowly, this is a 5-year plan, is to get into home building, custom home builds. It's one of the things that we struggle with around here is good quality work, but it keeps me in business. But definitely want to get into some home building, some things like that. That's kind of a goal of ours for sure.
And then what's an exit strategy for you, Kelton? Sell the business, pass it on.
Man, I don't think anybody's ever asked me that before. That's a new one. Exit strategy. Lord,
Always got to get your way out, right?
It might be far away, but you might
Yeah.
have one in your head somewhere.
It is far away. You're a
Probably.
young man.
yeah, probably in an urn. But yeah, but probably just ashes. Don't bury me in a casket. That's my only exit strategy I have right now.
There you go.
I'm just.
Don't
a
take
lot,
up
at least.
space.
Yeah, we're
I'm gonna make a note of that.
We're so new that I haven't even got that far yet. But look, exit strategy is this: I want my kids to be successful, and if this is something that I can grow, that they can work with or take over, that would be absolutely just the highlight of my career. But if selling it was an option, absolutely. I don't believe I could sell it doing what I'm doing now, but I do know that there are things that we've talked about doing, such as offering service plans for rental companies or for landlords that manage them themselves. And some of those things, and I don't mind sharing this because I would love to see other guys take this and do it as well, because it's an easy thing to do, is to make service plans for service 1, 2, and 3. And they're monthly plans where we go in, we check the air filters, we change the air filters for the tenant. That way the tenant doesn't have to, and then the landlords are happy it's taken care of. The landlord can either put that in their rent or the tenants can pay for it, little stuff like that. And that basically that monthly service can go from just that to, okay, we want to do that, but we also want to add on lawn service, those different things that we want to do for rental people to be able to manage their properties and make sure their houses are taken care of.
I can tell you, Kelton, from experience, like that's how I built my business and then eventually sold it, was on property management companies like that. Is a great way to do it. And with a communication strategy like you have, it would work really well because that's what they depend on is communication. So I think you're onto something for sure. That repeat business is gold.
Absolutely.
You can keep that repeat business. And you can only keep that repeat business if you've got good communications.
Yes.
Well, so we are kind of pressed for time in a bit, but
you're good.
we covered a lot of ground. So I want to just, before we wrap it up, I want to just ask you if there's something that you would want to share with our listeners. So anything that you would want the audience to take away, especially someone who's looking to follow in your footsteps of entrepreneurship, jumping out on their own field service business.
Oh, absolutely. This week you're going to make great money. Next week might get hard. Don't stop. Continue. Because the moment that you decide that you're going to throw in the towel, someone's going to be picking up the phone to call you to come and do a service. And if you keep that thought process of you're not going to be making money every single day. That's not always going to happen. But that one job might call that will make up for all the days that you missed. Just don't give up. Don't stop. And definitely don't let your mind play games with you. You are successful if you want to be successful.
I love it.
Great advice.
Perseverance.
I love that.
Great advice.
Well, that is great. Yeah, it is great advice. All right. Kelton, thank you so much for
Absolutely.
sharing your insights and your journey with us. And we really do appreciate the time that you came here to speak to us. And I think for aspiring entrepreneurs out there, this story is going to hit a home run with them, really.
Yep.
Especially that last part. I like that advice. Persevere.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was an incredibly enlightening conversation. A huge thank you to Kelton French for sharing those valuable insights and stories. It's great to see how much your hard work, passion, and dedication that you put in there, how it into French Fix and how it's paying off. And for all of you watching or listening, if you're in the greater Mobile Bay area, that's Mobile Bay, Alabama, and you're in need of some home maintenance services, make sure to reach out to French Fix. You can find their contact information right here on the screen,
Put your finger up, Kelton.
and they're ready to help you with all of your home maintenance and repair
There you
needs. You can trust that you're working with a true expert in the field. And once again, thank you, Kelton, for being here with
Thank
us
you.
on Swivl Session.
Thanks, Kelton.
Thanks, Kelton.
Thanks for listening or watching. Swivl's field service software is everything you need to run your field service for free. Until next time, check us out at swivl.tech. That's SWIVL.tech. And that's a wrap.